So the previous session is getting converted into the specific audio video files. Okay, let this go in parallel. Okay, so we were discussing about what is Kafka in high level, and what we are going to do there, data ingestion and data processing. The way I'm proceeding, is it faster or slow, or do you have any feedback? You want me to go slow, or is it fine?
We are good.
I think it is okay. No
Okay.
issues.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so I'll proceed next. Okay, now we saw, okay, there is a data which is getting generated. So from source, right, data source. And we store the data in a Kafka topic to make it as a buffered environment, or kind of one of the persistent storage. This is also one of the persistent storage. Only thing is, it is very, very low latency, right? It's whatever data you publish here, it is going to store where as fast as possible, and we consume the data, and
We cannot see your screen. I think you don't saying it.
Yes. Thank you for informing. Okay, I share it. I hope you will able to see that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So data is getting generated in a source which is published in the Kafka topic. We are going to consume the data and do the processing. Okay. Now I'll just come back to our slide. Okay, so we'll go to this slide and then we'll come back to this environment. Okay, we almost discussed here, but we'll still come back to this slide after some time. Okay, so the high level, these are the 5 steps we are going to do. So one is where okay, give me 1 minute, I'll just store this data. Okay, go here. Okay, all right. Okay, so as I mentioned, so this, right, the sales data or orders data, I don't have any e-commerce website or portal to have those data, right? So I was earlier planning to build a solution or application, but somehow I am not familiar with the UI development, so I just stopped with it. So I just built one simulator which can act as a e-commerce portal, right? So we just want to generate orders data, and that data can be published to the Kafka topic. So this entire scenario in the left side, I just created as a simulator. If anyone have like kind of exposure to building an e-commerce portal, it can be a simple e-commerce portal, they can very well use that. Okay, I will tell you how you can actually make this simulator to integrate with your e-commerce website. It can be any language. It can be built using a Python web framework or .NET based web application, or it can be a Java based web application. You can do that. Okay. So in this, whatever.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Can't we fetch our account? I mean, let's assume as Amazon itself. So, so can we stream our data from the Amazon?
No, because they don't expose, right? They don't expose the, at least to my knowledge, they don't expose the data, the order data.
Not order data, maybe other data where we can, the items and the prices, all those stuffs can be exposed through API, right?
Are they providing it? I'm not aware of it.
I
So
think there are some APIs which connects to e-commerce sites and fetch those information, right?
Okay. Yeah, probably.
Mhm.
Okay, so if you have those information, please share with me. So we can build that as well, like offline, or we can work
Yeah,
together.
sure. Sure.
Okay, so what I was thinking is, yeah, as you mentioned, if somebody is publishing data, we can consume it, or we can build a small e-commerce portal or application, right? So generally, what we use, if you want to take the data from public, which is not exposed as a API, we scrape it. So there's something called web scraping, right? We can scrape the data like as order data, product details, or it can be any other details. We can scrape the data if you want to take it from any public websites. That's one thing. So this part, for now, it is simulated a simulator which can generate the data in certain frequency. Okay, so that's the first part. Okay, and then we'll come to the second messaging layer, which almost we discussed earlier. We will, when you walk through the code, I will go through in very detail. And okay, so as I mentioned, you need to understand what is Kafka broker or server, Kafka topic, Kafka producer and consumer. And third is where we need actually the Spark knowledge. Okay, so here I would suggest you people to get good knowledge on Apache Kafka. It's one of the really demanding library or framework used in the market, right, for distributed messaging. Okay, so even if you take cloud providers, right, like Amazon or AWS, they have their services for distributed messaging framework. Okay, which is some people are just making use of Kafka and building the flavor out of it, right, as a new service. Some people are, they have their own, they are building their own messaging system, but it acts same as a publish subscribe station. So you need to understand at least one messaging layer if you want to build a real-time applications in when you go and work in any company. So I would suggest, please get good knowledge on the Apache Kafka. Now coming back to the data processing. So what we are using is the Apache Spark, right? So you can use different data processing engine as well here. So it can be as mentioned, like it can be any data processing framework which is available in the cloud platforms. Okay, so whatever you can do, but we are doing Apache Spark. We are using it. So if okay, anyone not having a Python background and having different programming skill set like Scala or Java?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Using Scala.
Oh, you are using Scala. So may I know your
But I'm
name?
learning Python, Nagarjuna.
Okay, now that's now okay, fine. So okay, so actually I built this solution using a PySpark. So you know what is PySpark? Basically, Spark is the framework which provides the APIs in the form in the different programming languages. Right, we can actually access the Spark APIs using different programming language. Since
Yes.
framework is developed using Scala, people, their first preference will be Scala, and then Spark also provides APIs in Python, which is called PySpark, and also it provides the APIs in a R also, programming language R, which is called Spark R, right? And
Yes.
yeah, so I just built this solution using PySpark. Okay, but this can be also built using a Spark with the Scala. Okay, only very minimal code changes. That won't be much code changes here. Only thing is here PySpark application, generally we just create a .py file which can act as a Spark application. So when you want to build as a Scala application, so we just have to build either Maven based project which will have the source code of Scala, or it can be a SPT based projects, whatever we can, or it can be a Gradle based project also. That's the only difference. So we'll stick with the PySpark for now, but I am open to help if people want to build it on the Scala-based project or Java-based project. That's the information I want to give.
So, Pari, which means
I'm learning
will there be
Python
any
also.
Okay, one
will
at a
there
time.
be any will there be any performance differences between the two programmings, PySpark and Scala? Which one will be the better and which will be the best in the market to gain the knowledge?
Okay, so there are two. We will look into two aspects. One is performance, right? So basically, the Spark is built using a Scala. So people suggest to use Scala for better performance. But at the same time, they also claim, since we are using a Spark with a different Spark as a different optimization techniques, so that whatever the language you use, end of the day, the code will be, your source code will be converted as a something called DAG, direct acyclic graph, right? So which is going to run on the Spark engine, the performance will not be so much difference. Right? That's what they claim it. So the code which I written in PySpark, the code which I written using Scala API, which is Spark with Scala, it's going to give almost the same performance. That's what they claim it. How they people adopt the different programming languages. One is ease of use or ease of development, or whether you are going to have any analytics solution you want to build, right? So, so mostly when I say analytics, if your project is going to involve machine learning, people will prefer PySpark, right? Because there is so much Python APIs or Python packages which used for mathematical computation or statistical computation. Those packages not much available in this as a pure Scala. Okay, so that's a way I look at it. Yeah, mostly the first preference will be if there is no machine learning stuff in your project, they prefer Scala. And say example, you have a build team, you build a team, you want to build quickly the processing application, but your team is having a Python shell script, so they will go for PySpark because they have to. Your team has to upskill on Scala, which is a object-oriented plus functional programming language. So it will have some kind of learning needed.
Thanks, Perry.
We are going here to use RDD or data frame.
Data frames. So here, so we are focused on the specifically the streaming part of it, right? Spark streaming. So when they introduce Spark streaming, right? So they introduce something called a D-stream, discretized stream, which is kind of wrapper over your RDD. See, so then when the data frame got popular, so they converted the streaming application, the D-stream based streaming application, into something called structured streaming, where you consume the data from source and you form a data frame. Instead of making a discretized stream, which is internally RDD, you make as a data frame so that you can perform SQL based operations, or it can be a data frame operation. So it's very, for a developer, it is very easy to work on it. So we are going to use the data frame based operations.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so those are the things we want to look into the string. So we will go through the code in detail tomorrow, so that time we'll understand it. Any other question? Okay, so you can always pass me or stop me if you have any question. Now, when we look into this data processing or data analytics step, so as I mentioned, there are two ways you can look at this step. One is data ingestion, where you just consume the data from Kafka topic and write it into the any storage. That is called data ingestion. Or you consume the data and do the processing, or just build whatever the aggregate or metrics you want to build, and finally you store it. Okay, so so you can do it in a certain interval, right? So they call it as micro batches. So Spark streaming supports micro batched fashion of computing, or as a stream creation. Like whenever the data arrives to this, whenever the data is consumed, we can just at a time, whatever the data we consumed, we do the processing and store the data into database. You can work with both things. So if you are working with micro batch mode, you have to set the batch interval. If you don't set the batch interval, it will automatically will work as a real time, which is like as soon as the data is consumed, it will process and store it. It's kind of data in motion. You just process and store it. So I'll tell you where to configure those intervals when we walk through the code. Okay, so finally, when you process the final data, we will store the data into MySQL, right? And we store the I'm going to store the aggregate data or the metrics data on the MySQL so that it can be published to the dashboards or reports easily. And also I'm going to store the raw data. When I say raw data, whatever the orders data the sales data you consume, we store it in STFS so that the raw data can be used for further analysis. If you want to build the machine learning solutions, like if you want to forecast something or if you want to predict something, you can do the analysis on the raw data. Okay, so both the operation we are going to perform it.
And also, when you mentioned when Kafka is consuming, putting it into the buffer, right? So,
Yeah.
in which systems that will store and how much? I mean, what is the retention on the?
So
those
what
things
happened?
when
Yeah. So basically, what happened whenever so setting up a Spark cluster, right? Similarly, there is a way to set up your cluster, the Kafka cluster, right? So here we are using single node cluster only. So after setting up your cluster, we need to create a topic, right? Where the actual data is going to store. So as I mentioned, based on your cluster capacity or how the cluster is built, you can set the partitions, right? Whenever you create a partition topic, we also configure the partitions, right? Whether you want to have one partition or multiple partitions, right? So that the data will be distributed across the partitions. Okay. As high level, I would say the data is stored in Kafka, but internally, if you look at Kafka topic, but internally, if you look at, it is going to store the data in a partition. I don't want to.
in which system? Yeah, in
Each
which
system,
system?
yes, each system in the cluster, correct.
I mean, it again stores in the HDFS itself, or
No, it uses the separate. It's a local file system. It uses a local file system. It uses the local file system. I just want to show you one architecture. So this. Okay, so this so say example here you can consider there is a 5 partitions. Okay, there is a topic which has 5 partitions, right? There is this this is one partition, this is one partition, so fine. This 5 partition will be in 5 different mostly 5 different nodes. Okay, or even single machine also can configure multiple Kafka servers or brokers, right? The message brokers. You can configure single machine, you can have multiple brokers also. But generally, people will configure one broker on one machine. Okay. So as I mentioned, it's going to store the data in a local file system. It is mostly it is act as a append only mode. So this 1, 2, 3 refers the offset, or you can call it as a message, right? ID. So data of the first message will come here, and the second message comes, it gets appended. Okay, so the retention policy is by default, Kafka will store your data for 7 days. That's a default retention policy, but you can adjust based on your project use case.
Okay.
Yeah. So when the consumer consumes the message from data from Kafka topic, which is from partition, either you can consume the data from latest message, or you can consume from the earliest, from starting. So both the features are available. When you build the real-time application, mostly we consume the data from the latest message, because we don't want to, we generally don't do the, every time we don't aggregate from starting, right? So that don't happen in the real-time processing. When you do the batch processing, yes, you may just take the data from the beginning and do the processing. Any other questions?
Maybe need to look more into the Kafka so that understand more. So
Sure.
as I mean, as you mentioned, it is storing into that cluster local file systems, right?
Yes, yes.
So as a producer, it may generate petabytes of data,
Correct.
right? In any sensors or any.
Yes.
So that
Yes,
much space should be present in those clusters, right? So
yeah, as a cluster, if you look at, yes, we have to say, but we are actually, that's what, no, when it comes to the big data, right, or the distributed system, the data is split into multiple machines. So you need look at the whole cluster, how much space you need. And also you may not actually store the data for it's a longer period, right? So it's basically a shorter period only. Yes, of course, you need, as a whole cluster, you need that much space. Whatever the data you want to publish and have your retention policy, that much size of data you need. It's applicable for even the Hadoop also, right? Say example, you store petabyte of data or gigabyte of data, but you don't store it for longer period. So there is a archive mechanism, archival policy. Like say example, after 1 year I don't want to maintain my data in a object storage. I just store it into the file storage. So there are multiple file storage services available, different cloud vendors, or it can be the normal data backup also.
Good. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, now we'll come back to this. So I was discussing about data ingestion. So we store the raw data, and in the data processing, we process data. So I just kept few aggregates in this data processing. It's a very simple one. Okay, so and then we are going to store the data into, so in this data processing application, we'll store the data into MySQL. So I just configured the MySQL database. Okay, we'll create the tables and store in that. Okay, and finally, so data, I build the visualization dashboard using a Django framework. Okay, so Django, they generally call it as Django or Django, they can pronounce. So it's basically a web-based framework. So people who are new to web application development, um, probably you just go through what is Django framework in Python. Basically, it's a web framework. So if you are familiar with Spring Boot or Node.js, where we build using the web application Node.js with Angular or React, so it's kind of a framework, right? And Chart.js is one of the JavaScript library to create a charts or graphs. Okay. So with these two, I build this dashboard. This can be replaced with, if you are familiar with the what is that Microsoft Power BI, the reporting tool, or if you are familiar with the Tableau or any other reporting tool, this can be replaced, because what we are doing it here is we are trying to retrieve the aggregated data from MySQL in certain frequency, so that the dashboard is getting updated on certain frequency. so that in whatever the interval you process and publish the data into the MySQL, in the same interval we are actually publishing in the dashboard. So this can be replaced with any reporting tool. If you are good at the Elasticsearch and Kibana kind of stack, ELK stack, this can be replaced with the Kibana also. So that's a last part of it. Yeah, so I hope I would suggest everybody to have a Python knowledge. Okay, at least even if you don't have Django knowledge, it's fine. It's only small part of it in this entire solution or data pipeline building. You can always make use of whatever knowledge you have it, or if you want to explore the Python Django also, I will help you out whatever the information you need. Do you have any other question?
I only one general question. We got an email, right? So there are weekend batch class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4,
Yeah.
and again it is weekdays. So
Yeah.
weekdays and weekend are two different classes, or it is the same repetition?
It's the same repetition. Actually, what happened, I mostly thought of keeping in a weekend as a batch, but some people
Okay.
are asking, they are not free at weekends, they are free at weekdays. So
Yeah, so we can join weekend or week both, right?
both, yes. No,
Okay.
no problem.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to we are, as you see, we are recording it. So either if you want to take offline also, it's fine, or if you want to join that class as well, fine for me.
No, just asking because there is a morning here in New York. It is now 11:37.
Yeah. I'm sorry
So
for it.
that's
Yeah, you can if you want, it's very late, you can quit and we can join anyway in the weekdays class.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so if you have any question, and otherwise we'll actually okay, I will take if anyone started the project setup part, I will actually help you to if you have any question, I will help you, or we will start on the either explaining about the each setup, or we will run this the entire use case. That's also fine.
I think you already provided the recorded videos for how to configure this VM, right? So
Yes. So I'm just going to tell in high level only, not in very detail. So anyway, yeah, all the steps are covered. Whatever the steps you need to do, like Python installation, right? So Python installation is very straightforward. Actually, when you install Ubuntu 20.04, by default it comes with the Python 3.8, I guess. 8 or
yeah,
10.
3.8. Yeah, we are getting 3.
So that's coming. So that portion also, it's very simple. So if you when you verify the version, if not there, you can just update the package index sudo apt-get and then install the Python 3. So as I mentioned, the Ubuntu 20.04 comes with the Python 3.8. Now you can go and install the pip package. So pip is basically a Python package installer. Using this only, you install multiple Python packages. Okay. Okay. So again, so if the meeting disconnects after 10 minutes, rejoin with the same link. Okay. So after pip installation, so to install pip, okay, install this, pip will get installed, and then we want to install some additional packages for some of the Python package installation needs this libSSL and other stuff. So I just put it here itself. So basically, you will face issue when you want to install MySQL client. There is a package called MySQL client. which will help you to connect the Python program to interact with the MySQL database. So that time you will face some dependency issues. So for that we just install this as well. Now next
So this
step.
is so this is for SSL certifications or something to communicate between the Python and the MySQL.
It's kind of thing, but I am not very much sure. But it's kind of, yeah. It's something called, generally I see there is a called GCC live not found, something I used to get that error.
Okay.
But on VM, this is already configured, right?
Yeah, VM, yeah, the pre-built VM is already configured.
Okay.
Whatever I'm saying is for the whoever want to do the fresh setup.
Since Python is already installed, when you still run this command, that doesn't have any problem.
No, not have any problem. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So the next part is something called Python virtual environment. If you are familiar with Python, you might know this. So otherwise, so it's basically creating a isolation environment for your Python application. Right? Say example, I might create a application 1 and I use certain Python packages. Then I build the application 2 where I may use different Python packages. So I don't want entire Python packages to dump it in the the root installation of Python, just to have a separation of concern, right? If we want to have a separate isolate. So Python virtual environment will help you to create a isolated Python runtime. Okay, so that you can install whatever package you need for that particular application. So that's called Python virtual environment. To create that,
so
yeah,
for every time, I mean, whenever we are building our application, every time we need to go into this environment, or how?
yes, yes. So say example, I create so I just take the paint. So this, just give me 1 minute. Okay, so generally when you install the Python 3, right? So basically it goes and get installed in certain location, right? So as example, user bin /Python. And here, so this get installed. So when I install new package, generally it goes and sits here, right? There is a place called, I think, site package or something. So there's a one folder,
Yeah.
right? So it goes and install all the packages here. So whenever I want to use that package, so I need to just import the particular package and start using it. So that's how the typical installation works. Now, when you create a virtual environment, so you can create a isolated environment, which will take the copy of the runtime from the root. Okay, so I just create this as so ecom Python, right? It's just underscore DataMaking. So this is one Python virtual environment. I just named it as ecom Python DataMaking. So this may be some XYZ underscore 1. So this Python environment, I can name it as some XYZ2, right? So here, when you create a Python environment here, it will just take the runtime alone. And whatever package you install it will be available only for this. Site packages. And when you want to use this Python virtual environment, you have to activate this environment. So there's a command to activate the Python virtual environment and then start using your start running your application. So it's one of the kind of best practice. So it's not mandatory, but it's kind of best practice. So if you want to use this XYZ underscore 1, then we need to activate this Python virtual environment and using it. For
So
that only,
two cannot be activated at the same time, right? So we have to stop the other one, or it will automatically stop.
You can, when you say start and activate, so it will activate to that. Mostly you just have to come out of it and then activate the other virtual environment.
Okay, thanks.
So that's the reason you have a command called source space. You need to give the specific Python virtual environment followed by bin/activate. So how do you create a Python virtual environment? So Python, there is multiple way you can create a Python virtual environment. There are some wrapper to create Python virtual environment itself. There is a packages, right? So Python comes with there is a environment. There is a package called VNV. If this package is not there, you can install this line of command, which is sudo apt install. This Y is basically just optional, and Python 3-VNV. This is also one package. So you need to install this. If by default it's not there, right? And how do you create a Python virtual environment? pip3-m and venv. Using this package only we are installing. So the name of my Python virtual environment is DataMaking here. So you can have it whatever name you want, but when you activate it, just give the environment name here, right? So the syntax is something like source, then Python, the virtual environment name, and then followed by bin/activate. This is the syntax. So here DataMaking is my virtual environment name, the Python virtual environment name.
So if I want to check how many virtual environments is there?
Yes, env list is there. I think there's a command called. We'll check it. There is a command to check what are the virtual environments available. Python virtual environment.
Okay.
I think there's a folder called envs, I guess, by default, and it stores there. I don't know whether it is in classic Python or Anaconda Python. So there is a so like we have a Java as a runtime, right? There are multiple flavor of Java runtimes like OpenJDK, Oracle JDK, right? Similarly, Python, there is a classic Python available. That's what we are using in this project. If you are familiar with, if you are a Python developer, you might also use something called Anaconda Python. It's another distribution of Python, right? Another runtime, Python runtime. So you can also use that if you are familiar with it. So I think there is a folder called envs. Inside that it goes, all this Python environments go stored there.
Yeah, when I'm creating this VM, I was able to make this virtual environment. Now, when I restarted my VM, I need to activate it, right? Every time.
Yeah, definitely you need to activate it. Yes.
So now when I'm going to that user DataMaking, I can't able to activate it. It is saying not found. That's
no, actually, what might have happened is, so, and when we say this, right? Say example, so wherever the location where you run this command, in that location you will find this folder. If you are running from different location, then it might say the Python virtual environment is not. Just go and check